To leave prison as stupid as you entered is a crime. I grew up in a good, solid, middle-class family. My father owned a bar, my mother worked, we had a really nice home, but I couldn't read until I was in 5th grade. So I go through school, I'm dyslexic, I can't read, I'm hyperactive, I don't know how to compete in school, I compete physically, I start using drugs, already my maturation is retarded, my thought process never matures, I don't start thinking like a rational being, I act on irrational impulse, which is the problem of a lot of prisoners or a lot of criminals, irrational impulse. Egocentric self-gratification, that's what you want, you don't care about the consequences, you just want what you want when you want it. When I was a young man, I thought that the ideal way to die was in a blaze of gunfire. And several years later, I almost died in a blaze of gunfire when I was in a shootout with the police. Well, a standoff with the police for 5 hours with a machine gun that was equipped with a silencer for 5 hours. Fired over 100 rounds. And, you know, my objective was to die. I wanted to die. I was sentenced to 22.5 to 45 years, and I spent the first 2 years in maximum security, which is 23 hours a day in a cell. And during that time, I reflected on my life. So it's about personal change. You know, you can't make somebody change if they don't want to. And that's that's one of the good things about prison, incapacitation. They remove people from society who refuse to change. When I went to prison, I was at the depth of my existence, the bottom of the barrel. I looked back on my conduct and my behavior, how I had humiliated and disgraced my family, and how I wanted to change that. What was available to me in prison within the confines of those parameters? The only avenue for me was education. So when I get to prison, they test me, adult basic education testing, and it turns out that I have a 7.4 level of education. I was absolutely humiliated. I couldn't write. Everything I spelled was phonetically, like phone, F-O-N-E. You know, I couldn't spell. I couldn't write my chicken scratch. It was just humiliating. So at that point, I said to myself, I'm going to change this. GED wasn't good enough for me. I had to have a high school diploma, so I got my high school diploma. At the same time that I was pursuing my high school diploma, I got my paralegal degree, and I just became totally infatuated with law and knowledge, and it just became a thirst that I could not quench, and I just pursued it, and as my family saw me doing this, they paid for it. My mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my grandmother, my uncle, they chipped in to pay my tuitions. They sent me books, my friends. I'd send order forms, my aunts. I mean, these people, they provided the support I needed. And they had a program where you could create your own major of concentration. So I went for a Bachelor of Specialized Studies in Paralegal Sciences. So I took all the law classes and writing classes. And then after I got my bachelor's degree, that wasn't enough. I needed a master's degree. And I searched until I found a school, California State University and Dominguez Hills, and then I got my master's through there. But master's wasn't good enough. I had to have a specialization, and my specialization was philosophy, one of the arts, philosophy, and I concentrated in political philosophy, and that's where my education led me. And as I pursued these things in hopes that it would be good enough to get me out of prison, but at the same time it would make my family proud, who I had shamed so many times because of my conduct. Oscar Wilde said, I believe it was, "The vilest deeds like prison weeds bloom well in prison air. It is only that which is good in man that wastes and withers there." Being in prison, you know, it made me devoid of emotion. I used to have to try and keep my emotions alive because you see a lot of ugly things in prison, and you have to build a facade over yourself that makes you devoid of emotion because you see a lot of things that are ugly. When I used to wake up in prison in the morning, I used to say, God, I'm glad there's prisons, because I was surrounded by malcontents that had no redeemable qualities. They belonged in prison, and many of them were getting out. The people that were never getting out, many of the people that were never getting out, those were the people that I thought should be getting out because their crimes, many of them were an aberration, something that would never happen again. And here we had these other malcontents, constantly in the mix and creating problems and chasing drugs and engaging in vandalism and assaults, and they're going home. Who's going to be attracted to this type of job? Who do you know that grows up and says, I want to be a prison guard? And I worked in the warehouse with him, and he came to me practically in tears saying, my God, you should see what they were doing to the guys in the room. They were beating them. I said, whoa, what was going on, man? Well, they had a riot, and all the guys were coming in, they were beating them. So I said, get me some people to talk to. So I started interviewing guys that witnessed the beatings and taking affidavits from them. Then I was able to get to some of the guys that were beaten and get affidavits from them. So what I did was I coordinated the transmission of this information to a reporter, a guy named Alan Cullison, for the Hartford Courant, who wrote an in-depth story that turned out to be a front-page Sunday expose on prison brutality. Now, he was so scared by the pressure that came down on him after this expose that he started questioning the truthfulness of it. And I said, listen, if you don't believe this, I'll get you affidavits for everything. And I said, however, if I give them to you, I want you to write an article because I'm sending them to the U.S. attorney and I'm demanding a federal civil rights investigation. He said, okay. I sent him the articles, the affidavits, and he wrote the article saying inmate demands a civil rights investigation, which instigated a 2-year federal civil rights investigation against guard brutality at Summers. I mean, they were just, they had lost their humanity. They had regressed to the depth of violence that the inmate population had been engaged in. Well, when you go to prison in democracy, it's supposed to be a rule of law in there too. You can't just throw the book away when it's not convenient to you anymore. And that's what happens in prison. If we look at prison from a business perspective, turning out a good product, I was a good product. When you have a recidivism rate of 55%, that means half of your product line, more than half of your product line is defective. You should be out of business. I mean, that's what our society is about. I mean, when something terrible happens in our society, we rally to that. We rally to that, and that's what makes our country great. We rally to a cause, and we help people. Our humanity, our charity. I mean, we believe in that, man, and we rally to it. We need to have some type of credible transition program which becomes part of the community, where people know that there are people there that are trying to get their lives right and given a second chance. But the ones that are willing to work, help them. And the best way to do that is providing them with a platform, with a transition back into society. Help them get a job, vouch for them, if they earn that. And it's all about earning, it's all about earning your respect and earning your credibility. Give them a place to live that's affordable so that they can build up a bank account, so that they can start to acquire things, buy a car, get some insurance, save up enough money to get themselves a decent apartment, a little bank account. They just need a little help. If we had that transitional facility for those people who are willing to work to attain a better future, then that would be great. And the failures, they go back to prison.